I was unpacking boxes in my new apartment in Portland when my phone rang with a number I hadn't seen light up my screen in almost 2 years. Marcus. My hands actually trembled as I stared at his name, and I had to set down the coffee mug I'd been unwrapping before I dropped it. We hadn't spoken since the night I told him I was taking the job offer, since the fight that ended with me sleeping on Derek's couch and Marcus refusing to answer my texts for 3 days until I finally stopped sending them. I almost let it go to voicemail. Almost. But something made me swipe to answer, and his voice came through exactly as I remembered it. Deep, a little rough around the edges, with that slight catch he got when he was nervous. "Liam?" he said, and just hearing him say my name made my chest tight. I know this is weird, me calling out of nowhere, but there's a massive storm system heading for the Pacific Northwest. They're saying it's going to be really bad. Power outages, flooding, the whole thing. And I needed to make sure you knew, that you were prepared. I stood there in my half-unpacked living room, surrounded by cardboard boxes and bubble wrap, trying to process this. Marcus had called me to warn me about the weather. Marcus, who lived in Chicago. Marcus, who I'd left behind when I moved to Denver 2 years ago, and who I'd left even further behind when I took this new position in Portland 3 weeks ago. Marcus, who knew exactly where I was because apparently he'd been keeping track. "You called to tell me about a storm," I said, and my voice came out stranger than I intended. Not angry, just confused. "How did you even know I was in Portland?" There was a pause, and I could picture him running his hand through his hair, the way he always did when he was caught at something. "Your mum mentioned it when I ran into her at Whole Foods last month. She seemed excited about your promotion." My mum. Of course. She'd always loved Marcus, had been devastated when we broke up. She probably gave him my entire life story in the produce section. "Marcus, Portland is 2 states away from you. Why are you calling me about weather?" Another pause, longer this time. I heard him take a breath. "Because I saw the news alert and the first thing I thought was whether you'd know how bad it's supposed to get. Whether you'd moved into a place that floods. Whether you'd have enough food if the power goes out for days. And I realized I don't actually know any of those things about your life anymore, but I couldn't stop thinking about it, so I just called." I sat down on the arm of my couch, the only piece of furniture I'd managed to get set up so far. Outside my window, the Portland sky was already that heavy grey that I was learning meant rain was coming. I'd moved here for the job, for the career opportunity I couldn't pass up, but I'd be lying if I said part of me hadn't also been running. Running from Denver, from the memories of Chicago before that, from the way Marcus had looked at me when I told him I was leaving the first time. "I'm on the 3rd floor, I said finally, "so flooding shouldn't be an issue, and I just did a grocery run yesterday because I'm still figuring out what's nearby." "Good," he said, and I could hear the relief in his voice. "That's good. Do you have candles? A flashlight?" "Marcus, I'm 32 years old. I know how to prepare for a storm." I know you do. He trailed off, and in the silence I could feel all the weight of everything we'd never said to each other. "I'm sorry, this was stupid. I shouldn't have called." "Wait," I said before he could hang up. "Don't. It's not stupid." The truth was, hearing his voice had cracked something open in me that I'd been trying to keep sealed shut since I loaded up the moving truck in Denver. I'd been so focused on the new job, the new city, the fresh start, that I'd been ignoring the fact that I was lonely as hell. I didn't know anyone in Portland yet. I'd spent the last 3 weeks working 12-hour days and coming home to these boxes, ordering takeout, falling asleep to Netflix. I hadn't admitted to myself how much I missed having someone who cared whether I was prepared for a storm. "How are you?" I asked, and it felt like such an inadequate question for everything I wanted to know. How are you really? Are you seeing anyone? Do you ever think about that weekend we spent at your parents' cabin, when we barely left the bedroom and you told me you'd never felt this way about anyone? Do you remember the way we used to cook together? How you'd stand behind me and kiss my neck while I chopped vegetables? Do you regret the way we ended things? Because I do. I really do. "I'm okay," Marcus said. "Work is good. I made senior partner last year." "Marcus, that's amazing. Congratulations." "Thanks. It's been a lot of hours, but it's what I wanted." Another pause. "I'm still in the same apartment. I kept thinking I'd move somewhere bigger, but I don't know. It feels like home, I guess." The apartment we used to share on weekends when I'd take the train from Denver to visit him. The apartment where we'd spend Saturday mornings in bed, where he'd make his terrible coffee that I pretended to like, where we'd argued about whether to get a dog or wait until I could move to Chicago permanently. Except I never did move to Chicago. I took the Denver job instead, and we tried long distance for a year before the strain of it broke us. Listen, Marcus said. I really did just want to make sure you were safe. But since I have you on the phone, how's Portland treating you? I looked around at my disaster of an apartment, at the boxes I'd been avoiding unpacking because every item I pulled out reminded me of a different version of my life. Honestly, it's been kind of lonely. I don't know anyone here yet. The job is incredible, but it's a lot. And the rain is pretty much constant, which everyone warned me about, but I didn't realize how much it would get to me. You always hated grey skies, Marcus said softly. You need sunshine or you get all broody and philosophical. The fact that he remembered this tiny detail about me, made my throat tight. Yeah? Well, apparently I'm willing to be broody and philosophical for a senior director position and a 30% salary increase. Is it worth it? The question hung between us, and I knew he wasn't just asking about the job. I thought about the last 2 years, about the promotions and the career advancement and the new cities. I thought about the nights I'd lie awake in Denver, wondering if I'd made the right choice leaving Chicago, leaving him. I don't know yet, I said honestly. Ask me again when I've actually unpacked. Marcus laughed, and God, I'd forgotten how much I loved that sound. You always were terrible at unpacking. When you moved to Denver, didn't you live out of boxes for like 2 months? 3 months, actually. I'm hoping to beat that record this time. Well, you'll definitely have time this weekend if the storm is as bad as they're predicting. Power's supposed to go out Friday night and might not be back until Monday. Great. Nothing like forced productivity in the dark. You could always unpack by candlelight. Make it romantic. The word romantic hit differently than he probably intended, and suddenly the conversation felt too heavy, too weighted with everything we weren't saying. I stood up and walked to the window looking out at the darkening sky. The first drops of rain were starting to hit the glass. It's starting, I said. The rain. Be careful this weekend, okay? I mean it. If it gets bad, if you need anything. Marcus, you're in Chicago. What are you going to do from 2 states away? I don't know, he admitted. But I'd figure something out, I always did. That was true. When we were together, Marcus had been the one who handled everything. The one who made sure we had reservations, who remembered to pay bills, who knew exactly what to do in any crisis. I'd loved that about him, and I'd also resented it sometimes, the way it made me feel like I needed taking care of. Maybe that's why I'd kept taking jobs in different cities, to prove I could handle things on my own. I should let you go, Marcus said. I'm sure you have a million things to do before the storm hits. Marcus, I said, and then stopped because I didn't know what I wanted to say. Thank you. I miss you. Calling me was the best thing that's happened since I moved here. Yeah? Thank you for calling. Really? It means a lot. Take care of yourself, Liam. He hung up before I could respond, and I stood there with the phone pressed to my ear for a long moment before lowering it. Outside, the rain was coming down harder now, and the sky had gone from grey to almost black. I should have been thinking about the storm, about preparing, about all the practical things Marcus had called to warn me about. Instead, I was thinking about the way his voice had sounded when he said my name, about the fact that he'd been thinking of me at all. I went back to unpacking, pulling things from boxes with more focus than I'd had in weeks. I found candles and flashlights, made sure my phone was charged, filled water bottles. But my mind was still on Marcus, on Chicago, on the life I'd left behind. Twice. The storm hit Friday night, just like the forecast had predicted. The wind picked up around 7, and by 9 the power was flickering. I'd made dinner before it got too bad, had set up candles around the apartment, had downloaded a few books to my phone in case I lost internet. I was as prepared as I could be. When the power finally went out around 10, plunging the apartment into darkness broken only by candlelight, my phone rang again. Marcus. The power out? He asked when I answered. Just went. How did you know? I've been tracking the storm. Most of northwest Portland lost power about 10 minutes ago. I sat down on the couch, pulling a blanket around myself. The heat had gone out with the power, and the apartment was already getting cold. You've been tracking the storm. I wanted to make sure you were okay. Marcus, this is insane. You know that, right? I'm a grown man in a storm. People handle this every day. I know. I can't explain it, Liam. I needed to know you were safe. There was something in his voice, a vulnerability I remembered from late nights in Chicago when he'd let his guard down. When he'd tell me about his fears, his insecurities, all the things he never showed anyone else. I'm safe, I said softly. Cold, but safe. The apartment's actually pretty cozy by candlelight. Yeah? Yeah. It's kind of nice, actually. Quiet. Makes me realise how much noise there usually is, all the background hum of electronics and appliances. It's just me and the rain now. I wish I was there, Marcus said, and the admission seemed to surprise both of us. I closed my eyes, letting myself imagine it. Marcus here in this apartment, the two of us riding out the storm together. We'd make a nest of blankets on the couch, light every candle we could find, maybe play cards or just talk the way we used to talk when we first got together. When we could spend hours just learning each other, sharing stories, building something that felt unbreakable. Why did we fall apart? I asked, the darkness making me brave. Really? I know we said it was the distance, but was that really all it was? Marcus was quiet for a long time. I could hear his breathing, could imagine him in his apartment in Chicago, probably sitting in the same chair where I used to curl up and read while he worked. You wanted more than I could give you, he said finally. You wanted adventure and new experiences and to test yourself. And I wanted stability and routine and someone who'd come home to me every night. We were never going to work long-term, Liam. We both knew that. Did we? Because I remember being happy. I remember thinking I'd found something real. It was real. That was never the question. Then what was the question? Whether real was enough. Whether love was enough when we wanted such different things. I pulled the blanket tighter, feeling the cold seep in. Outside, the wind howled and rain lashed against the windows. And you decided it wasn't. We both decided that. You took the Denver job. I didn't ask you to stay. I wanted you to ask. The words were out before I could stop them. A confession I'd never made even to myself. But it was true. I'd wanted Marcus to fight for me. To tell me that what we had was worth more than any job opportunity. Instead, he'd helped me pack, had taken me to the airport, had kissed me goodbye like it was just another trip instead of the beginning of the end. If I had asked, would you have stayed? I thought about it honestly. I don't know. Maybe not then. But maybe I would have come back eventually, if I'd known you wanted me to. I always wanted you to, Marcus said, his voice rough. Every single day for the last 2 years, I've wanted you to come back. But I also wanted you to chase your dreams, to become whoever you needed to become. How could I ask you to give that up for me? You could have let me make that choice. And you could have chosen me over Denver, over Portland. But you didn't, Liam. And I'm not saying that to hurt you. I'm just saying we both made our choices. He was right, and that hurt more than anything. I had chosen the jobs, the moves, the career advancement. I'd chosen my own path over the possibility of building something with him. And now I was sitting alone in the dark in a city where I didn't know anyone, talking to the man I'd left behind, realizing that all my choices had led me here, to this moment of clarity that felt like it came too late. I miss you, I said. I've missed you this whole time, and I think I've been moving farther away geographically because I couldn't handle being close enough to do something about it. Marcus made a sound that might have been a laugh or might have been something else. That's very you. Run away to Portland to avoid dealing with feelings about someone in Chicago. I'm good at avoidance. I know, it's one of the things that drove me crazy about you. You'd rather start over somewhere new than work through something hard. That stung because it was true. How many times had I done this? New city, new job, new life, rather than staying and fighting for what I had. With Marcus, with friends, with any kind of permanence. I don't want to be that person anymore, I said. Then don't be. It's not that simple, isn't it? You make a choice, Liam. That's all it ever is. A choice. We talked through the night as the storm raged outside, about everything and nothing, about his work and mine, about the life he'd built in Chicago and the life I was trying to build in Portland, about the people we'd dated since each other, none of them serious, none of them quite right, about the small moments we missed about being together, the way we'd developed our own language, our own jokes, our own rhythm. By the time grey dawn light started filtering through the windows, the storm had passed and something had shifted between us. We hadn't solved anything. We were still 2 states apart, still living separate lives, but there was an honesty now that hadn't been there before. I should let you get some sleep, Marcus said, though neither of us moved to hang up. Marcus, I'm glad you called, about the storm and all of it. Me too. And Liam, the power should be back on in your area by this afternoon, but if it's not, call me, okay? Okay. After we hung up, I sat in the growing light and looked at my apartment, at all the boxes still unpacked, at the life I was trying to build here, and I thought about Marcus, about Chicago, about the fact that senior director positions existed in other cities too, about the fact that some things were worth fighting for, even if it meant admitting you'd been wrong, even if it meant going backward to move forward. The power came back on that evening, and with it, a clarity I hadn't felt in years. I pulled out my laptop and started making calls, to my boss, to HR, to the Chicago branch of my company, asking questions, exploring possibilities, finding out if there was a path that didn't require me to choose between my career and my heart. 3 months later, I was packing boxes again, but this time I knew exactly where I was going and why. Chicago had an opening for a senior director position. It wasn't quite as prestigious as Portland, but it was close enough, and more importantly, it was home. Or it could be, if Marcus was willing to try again. I hadn't told him yet. I wanted it to be a surprise, wanted to show up at his door and prove that this time I was choosing him, choosing us, choosing to fight for something instead of running away. When I finally stood outside his apartment building on a cold Chicago afternoon, my heart was racing. I'd rehearsed what I wanted to say 100 times, but now all the words felt inadequate. So when he opened the door and saw me standing there with my suitcase, I just said the truth. You called to warn me about a storm 2 states away, and I realised that's love. That's what it looks like. Someone tracking weather patterns and thinking about whether you have candles. So I'm here. I took the Chicago position. I'm here, and I'm staying, and I'm asking you to give us another chance. Because you were right. We both made choices, but I'm making a different choice now. Marcus stared at me, and for a long moment I thought maybe I'd misread everything. Maybe the phone calls had just been nostalgia, maybe he'd moved on, maybe I was too late. Then he smiled, that smile I'd fallen in love with years ago, and pulled me inside. Into his arms, into his apartment, into the life we'd both been too scared to fight for before, and finally, I was home. Total char count, 18,647.